Mario's villainous doppelganger, Wario, has been in our lives for decades now, providing us with plenty of bizarre, foul-smelling adventures in games that run the gamut of genres. However, the most iconic of these games would probably have to be WarioWare, the madcap minigame extravaganzas that only get weirder the longer you play them. There's no doubt that WarioWare games are incredibly strange and unique, but how did they come to be? We hope you're ready to get weird and find out in Making the Madness, Developing WarioWare Games, Game Facts Special, Origins. WarioWare wouldn't have been possible in the first place without the creation of Nintendo's most peculiar mascot. The first appearance of the mustachioed menace was in the 1992 Game Boy game Super Mario Land 2: 6 Golden Coins, where he served as the primary villain. Wario's dastardly deeds proved to be the perfect mirror to Mario's generally good intentions. The character of Wario was created and designed by Hiroji Kiyotake, an iconic game designer for Nintendo, who has been an integral part of the company since he joined in 1983, having also played a part in designing Metroid 2 and Dr. Mario. Surprisingly, the character's name wasn't created just by simply flipping the M in Mario to a W. Kiyotake-san discussed the creation of Wario in a 1992 developer interview with the official Nintendo guidebook that coincided with Super Mario Land 2's launch. According to him, they came up with the idea for his name first. The character was to be a bad guy, and the Japanese word for bad is warui, which they extrapolated into Wario. You might notice that the evil doppelganger for Luigi is Waluigi, which also plays on the Warui theme. While his debut was subject to the limitations of the Game Boy hardware, this appearance did establish his W cap, crazy eyes, pointy shoes, and his iconic pointy mustache. The character proved to be popular enough with fans that he starred in no less than 6 games between 1994 and 2003. The majority of these games were traditional platformers like fans had come to expect from the Mario series. But a one-off game made under the table by a team of inspired developers would go on to largely define Wario's place in the video game industry and in Nintendo canon. Inspired by creativity. In the year 2000, Nintendo released a series of games. They were more like functional creativity software, called Mario Artist for the Nintendo 64 and its DD Dynamic Drive add-on. Intended as the spiritual successor to the less sophisticated Mario Paint on the SNES, Mario Artist consisted of Paint Studio, Talent Studio, and Polygon Studio. But Polygon Studio is the one that helped spawn WarioWare. With the disk drive software, players could design, create, and animate 3D models. However, these models were not only intended to impress your friends, they were also used in Sound Bomber, which presented players with a series of bite-sized minigames that found creative ways to use the models you created. This novel system went on to inspire Nintendo's R&D1 development team to create an entire game based solely around this idea of microgames. Goro Abe, a game designer and programmer, was one of the 6 members of R&D1's WarioWare All-Star team. Abe even directly references the team when asked how the concept for WarioWare came to be in an interview with the early 2000s gaming news outlet Kikizo. Designing for quantity and silliness. But in order to create enough of these microgames to fill out an entire game, you'd need an awful lot. So, how did R&D1 manage to make more than 200 of these? By using a simple yet inventive system. Anytime a member of the game's development had an idea for a microgame, they would write it down on a post-it note and leave it on Hirofumi Matsuoka's desk, who was serving as the game's director. Whoever came up with an idea that wasn't deemed too obscene or too Japanese were then responsible for designing and creating their microgame, which led to an interesting phenomenon that proved to be the backbone of the WarioWare experience. Every game had a distinct visual style and concept, and no 2 games looked the same unless they were designed by the same person. In a game with over 200 of these things, you could play for a long time before you ever saw a similar game, which is pretty impressive. Early on in the process, when the team discussed who or what should headline the game, Wario was quickly suggested. Who better to be the face of a game as unhinged and disjointed as this than a character who, according to the project supervisor Yoshio Sakamoto, quote, is always doing stupid things and is really idiotic. Made in secret. Surprisingly, early development for the first Wario game went on in secret. When asked by Kikizo in the same interview if it was difficult to get WarioWare Inc. Mega Microgames approved, the project supervisor Yoshio Sakamoto said, "Actually, to tell you the truth, we made the game secretly. We were talking about the idea of the game with some other people on the team, and then we just decided to make it without telling our manager at the time." An incredibly bold move for a team that works for a company as rigid as Nintendo, but their gambit ultimately paid off. Their manager reportedly just said, "Okay," and development continued. Marketing insanity. When the game was completed and it was then time to market the game, Shigeru Miyamoto himself planned the game's marketing. Trying to sell a game as unconventional as WarioWare was no small feat, but the legendary member of Nintendo thought a lot about it, and he wanted to showcase how WarioWare's unusual gameplay made it stand out. This game, perhaps more than any other at the time, was perfectly suited to the Game Boy Advance, as it was designed for quick pickup and play sessions. In the end, he came up with the tagline, "More, shorter, faster," which was so prominent on the game's Japanese box art that it was bigger than the actual title. The tagline was unfortunately not used for the Western box art, which instead showcased Wario's weird mug, along with the rest of the game's eclectic cast. Great success and creating a legacy. WarioWare Inc. Mega Microgames was an unmitigated hit. Most video game outlets reviewed the game favorably, and it has maintained a Metascore of 89 on Metacritic since its release in 2003. Just about every review praised the game for its innovation and short-burst gameplay, and Nintendo always knows when they have something special on their hands. A multiplayer-themed remake of Mega Microgames called Mega Party Games for the GameCube came that same year, and the WarioWare dynasty was born. Hirofumi Matsuoka left Nintendo after the original game's completion, but Goro Abe stepped up from his programmer and game designer role to become the director of every other entry in the series, except for the DSi's WarioWare Snapped, meaning all of those crazy post-its go on his desk now. Yoshio Sakamoto also upgraded from a supervisor and has been a producer on the series since WarioWare Twisted released in 2004. In addition to the founding members of the WarioWare series at Nintendo R&D 1, which was abolished and rebuilt as the Nintendo Software Planning and Development Division in 2003, the renowned Nintendo second-party development studio Intelligent Systems has participated in every game's development since Mega Party Games on the GameCube, with employees Taku Sugioka and Naoko Mori serving the series as co-directors and designers. Fun fact, Intelligent Systems also developed Mario Paint for Nintendo, the prequel to Mario Artist, which contains the microgames that inspired WarioWare. Every Nintendo console and handheld since the first game's release has had an installment of WarioWare, and each of those also found ways to make use of the innovative features of its hardware, or introduced peripherals to create new and interesting gameplay. As of now, there are over 1,300 microgames across every entry in the series, and each one was created with the post-it system that the original development team created. Here's a quick rundown of the other 9 games that currently make up the WarioWare franchise. WarioWare Twisted, the 2004 sequel to Mega Microgames on the GBA. This title featured an innovative cartridge that contained a piezoelectric gyroscope, which unlocked tilting and twisting microgames. WarioWare Touched. Touched also released in 2004, but now called new hardware its home, the Nintendo DS. It utilized the handheld's dual screens, lower touchscreen, and built-in microphone for its new set of microgames. WarioWare Smooth Moves. 2006 saw the release of WarioWare Smooth Moves. This entry came to the Wii and made use of the console's movement-focused input methods. However, some microgames also required the use of the Wii's nunchuck controller attachment. WarioWare Snapped. WarioWare Snapped from 2008 was a digitally distributed entry that made its debut on the Nintendo DSi's DSiWare service. This is one of the smallest WarioWare games, with only 20 microgames, and it used the DSi's camera to create a silhouette of the player in-game. WarioWare D.I.Y. 2009's WarioWare D.I.Y. was a title that focused on user-generated content, with tools that allowed players to build their own microgames that could be shared with other players using the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection service on the Nintendo DS. WarioWare D.I.Y. Showcase. WarioWare D.I.Y. Showcase was the digital download companion game to D.I.Y. that was released on the Wii, and allowed players to play games created in the DS game using the Wii Remote. Gaem and Wario. Gaem & Wario is a Wii U game that was released in 2013 and serves as a spin-off to the main WarioWare franchise. It has fewer minigames that are longer in length, and they all make use of the features on the Wii U gamepad. WarioWare Gold. The Nintendo 3DS got WarioWare Gold in 2018, which functioned as a best of for the WarioWare series. It had 300 microgames in total, with a mix of old ones from previous games as well as new ones. Gold is also the first game in the series to have full voice acting. Mario's English voice actor, Charles Martinet, voices Wario 2 after all. WarioWare Get It Together. The latest WarioWare game is WarioWare Get It Together on the Nintendo Switch. Released in 2021, Get It Together features surprising new gameplay and allows you to play through each microgame as any member of the WarioWare cast, each of which has its own gameplay and abilities. Thanks to Mike Alexander for writing this episode. What kind of GameFAQs special episodes would you like to see? Let us know in the comments below. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe too. Check out our recent episodes on every canceled Spider-Man game and every canceled Batman game. This is McGen signing off. Thanks for watching. This has been a GameFAQs special.